tossers have thrown it out the door with their behaviour this week. They should be ashamed of themselves. They should absolutely look at themselves in the mirror and wonder what the have they been doing. They're hissing at us and calling us cheats in the Lord's long room, and they have the gall to say, talk to us about the spirit of cricket. Absolute bullshit.
There's a big appeal that's hit him on the pad. He's out. Lions gone. New South Wales are 9 down. Onto Sydney Road, and it's hit a car. Oh, I think it's hit a car. What a way to bring up your 50.
All you want is to leave it all behind. Now there is a simple remedy to stay fit for all eternity.
Yes, Cricket Unfiltered is back. I'm on the road. I'm in Adelaide. I've been preparing for the second test. I'm Menners. I'm joined by Gav Joshi. How are you, Gav?
I'm well, Menners. How is it in Adelaide?
Mate, it's great. And I am pumped because I think this is the biggest test in Australia since the 2017-18 Ashes series. That first test, I think that this is the biggest test since then, because so much is on the line. The series, the World Test Championship final, and the future of this team. And I'm saying it right here, the future of Pat Cummins' captaincy rests on this series. So there is so much at stake. I mean, this is a huge test that everyone's been talking about in the press box, that this has got the makings of one of the biggest tests for this generation.
I couldn't disagree more. I haven't, the media can go one way or the other. If Australia is to go 2-0 down, I think this is going to be massive. I think there's going to be, we've already seen, the old boys club fire up a little bit. I think they are pretty much, going to be in full throttle in terms of their criticism if Australia is to lose, and especially if it's as comprehensively as it was in Perth. So no doubt, I think one really important and a telling test match in Australian, well, probably history, because you don't know what the future is going to be like. Future is going to depend rather on the result of this test.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge game. Before we get into the episode and the preview, we've got lots of news for the upcoming test. There's been some feedback on the YouTube page. So apparently I'm too negative about the Australians. Some people feel I'm too negative about the Australians, and some people feel you're too negative about the Indians. So there's some irony here. I feel going into this second test, I'm going to give Cummins and the team the benefit of the doubt. They keep saying all week how successful we've been. Travis Head said it. Alex Carey said it. Pat Cummins has inferred it. This group's had a lot of success. Now, I think that success is not as much as they say. So they drew the Ashes. They just beat an average Pakistan. They drew it home to the Windies, but a great series win in New Zealand. But I'm going to say, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to be positive and say that they can turn it around. They are good enough. I'm not sure they will, but I think they can. So that's the spirit I'm going into it. Are you expecting more from India now after you've seen them?
Yeah, I mean, it makes you quietly confident. But we talked about the Australian batting. It's not like I was being too negative about India. It's just the fact that they had lost, and there were question marks on, Kohli's form. There were question marks on, who's going to do the job alongside Bumrah. They all proved it. And when somebody proves it, and, you've been going after Cummins for a long time, but I back Cummins purely for the fact that, yes, he's won the Australia World Cup. He's had success. Now, success is relative on depending on what every team. What I found from the press conference, though, from today, and I'll let you sort of discuss it, is Pat Cummins is not grumpy Alan Border. He doesn't show it, but deep down, I think there's a bit of frustration built up in Pat Cummins. And I think he's a master of sort of just just having a bit of a smile, but he brushes questions off pretty easily. And I think he's media trained really well, or the fact that I think there's a bit of he just don't want to listen to the question. I sense that today, or importantly, I think there's definitely pressure on him. So there you go. I've been back in Australia, but I think the pressure is definitely on it. I think India's going to be relaxed. I think they're just perfect set of mind. Rohit Sharma, I think, even had a bit of a giggle when said Australia under the pressure, and he said, "I don't get into it." But deep down, I think there's a bit of smile there, almost to say, "Well, India know that the pressure is definitely on Australia."
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Sharma was very relaxed. Absolutely, came across as very relaxed. Just on Pat Cummins, and we'll get to it in more detail. But I actually picked up a vibe from him similar to you. Two things: pressure, and then I got the sense, which is good for Australia, he's pissed off, and he's ready to unleash on the Indians with the ball. So he was calm. You're right. He just batted off the questions he didn't want to talk about. And there is pressure on him, but I do feel there was that fast bowler coming out. He just wants to get out there and shut everybody up. And I believe that I think they believe that they can turn it around. They've got this sort of very calm demeanor. So, I think Pat Cummins wants to go out there and shut all those idiots up, including me, who've been chasing him after that first test loss.
100%. And traditionally, Australian teams have done pretty well when the back is against the wall. Like World Cup is a great example. Nobody, I think once South Africa smashed them in Lucknow, I think everyone was like, the World Cup is gone. And people like Adam Zampa were keeping receipts, as he called them, of all the criticism that was coming this way. I think this is also the fact that, Pat Cummins' manager, or who's same as Josh Hazlewood, Neil Maxwell, has come out and said, I think the broadcasters are on a tangent. There's no divide. Just tells me that Pat's probably has needed someone from his camp to speak up.
Okay, on that divide, you and I were right onto it on the day it happened. We both said there was nothing in that, and I think it's because you and I know Hazlewood pretty well. He's been on the podcast before, but we've also seen him a lot over the years. Yep. We know he's just that country boy who's very practical. He's very practical. There was no divide. When he was asked, how are you going to prepare tomorrow? It wasn't, it's up to the bloody batters. It's just practically, I'm a bowler, about 11. I'm not really going to be much help to you. And that was it. And the broadcasters went way too far, and it was a mistake. And Cummins said today they were 100% wrong. And you know me, I criticize Cummins, but I hate made up shit like that. I hate the woke Cummins stuff, because the woke stuff is nothing to do with it. But you're right.
But the fact that the player agent has got involved and gone out to the media, or vice versa, it just shows to me there's a bit of, they don't come out, and they need a bit of backing here. So it's a little bit of a surprise for me. Which just shows pressure. And I think you're right. I think Pat Cummins is ready to go. We'll talk about it as we build up to the test, but does Pat Cummins dead set get the new ball, though?
He said he would. So he said today he's going to take the new ball. There is one change for the Australians. Josh Hazlewood is out. Scott Boland is coming in. That is the only change for the Australian side. We'll get to the Indian side. I got here yesterday for Nathan Lyon's press conference, and I actually said on a previous broadcast I was worried Nathan Lyon didn't like me anymore because he follows me on Twitter. But actually, he shook my hand. He said hello to me. The only media that got singled out. So I can put that to bed. No feud between Lyon and Manners. But he said that the reaction was humorous, and Carey was very nonchalant about it. Head was very nonchalant about it. And what else do you expect from the team? What else can they say? Like they have to stay even. Like it's up to the media. We can all go crazy, but if they're going to turn this series around, they have to stay calm. And I think we've seen that. Whether that's going to be enough, I don't know.
Yeah, look, I think Australia just want the test match to start now. It's at that stage. Get on with it. You will worry about it. It has been so much outside noise. Interesting what Michael Clark said, I think might have been yesterday, 2 days ago on radio. He said, basically, you always felt when you went one down at home, that's when more pressure is on you than away, because less people are sort of listening. And you sense it. And this is a build-up. I don't think this, when Australia wasn't looking to do well in the World Cup, I don't think there was immense pressure on them. If they lost the World Cup, big deal. But this is at home. This is against India, who are, we've talked about it. I think the biggest rivalry in cricket. It's pressure. And generally Australia, as they proved in the World Cup final, handle pressure pretty well, or India don't handle it well. That's probably more way of doing it. India probably haven't handled pressure well. I think this time around they're in a comfort zone, so it'll be interesting to see how India react. If they stay calm, I think Australia are going to really feel that pressure a lot more.
Yeah, I think India loves being here. They're fated everywhere they go, but it's not quite as intense as it is in India. Nathan Lyon made a radio appearance yesterday, and he said that Jaiswal said to him out in the middle something like, "You're a legend." Jaiswal said this to Lyon, "You're a legend, but you're too old now," or something like this. So these Indians aren't going to take a backward step. They've got their nose in this series. They've got their nose in front in this series, and they are going to be desperate to just knock Australia out at Adelaide, go 2-0 up. 2 days ago, they opened the training session for India, and 5,000 Indian fans turned up to watch them at the Adelaide Oval. I was speaking to some of the press people there, and they said basically one of the stands was almost full, just with fans watching India train. And now India have said they're not going to do any more open training sessions for the rest of the tour. And I actually 100% agree with them. They spend so much time in the spotlight.
Yes.
You cannot have 5,000-10,000 people watching you at training.
Well, I heard a player say it's a bit of the heckling. It might be just a good shot, which is fine, but it's some of the other stuff that goes on behind the scenes, I've seen Indian fans from close up, been covering Indian cricket for a while, 10 years. Every time, it's just the most ridiculous question. It's almost you walking up to Pat Cummins and offering, well, you know what, you should set up Jaiswal with 3 outswingers and an in-swinger. That's the kind of stuff that gets said. Or Rohit Sharma mishits one in the nets and they said, oh, see, the front elbow wasn't as high. And this is what would really piss off the Indian players. And plus there's just, oh, come on, give us an autograph. Why don't you take a selfie? That kind of stuff. So I'm actually with Team India. I think 5,000 people is way too much. And they're just too close. At Adelaide Oval, the nets are just too close. You can hear them. And, yeah, I totally agree. There's been times when the Indian media has been told to be away from the team at times, not within an earshot. So I totally agree with that.
Yep, I spent a bit of time watching the Australians train yesterday, and they had a pretty full training session. And Steve Smith, I saw a comment on the ABC by Smith that he doesn't like the pink ball. He finds it hard to see. And there was this young kid, must have been around 18 to 20, who clean bowled Steve Smith twice. So he clean bowled him once, and Smith turned around and we heard him say bloody pink ball or something like that. Something about the pink ball. And then, let me finish. And then, so Smith's determined every time this kid bowls, he's going to hit him for 4. So the next few deliveries, this kid comes in and you just see Smith like pound him into submission. And then he gets him again. He comes in and bowls him again. So this kid's going to be, at school or at club training, telling people, I bowled Steve Smith twice.
Well, you might hate the pink ball, and his record shows it. So here is his numbers from Adelaide, because you made me think a little bit, Menas. So 8 matches in Adelaide, the day and night ones, 15 innings. He's got 407 runs, average of just 31.3 and just 3 50s. There you go. So a lot of focus on Marnus, but I don't think anybody's mentioned Steve Smith's record with the pink ball anywhere, especially in Adelaide. Of course, he had a couple of test matches at the Gabba as well. But in Adelaide, his record is not that great. So clearly, yes, I've heard him on that radio say, no, I don't like the pink ball. You heard him in person say bloody pink ball. I don't think he's a big fan of it. So, his record shows it, which puts even more pressure on the Australian top order.
Oh, absolutely. There wasn't much else to come out of training yesterday. Marnus had a long bat. In fact, I saw all the players batting. And I did make a little note that Khawaja looks a bit jumpier than last time I saw him. He's getting old. I just saw him jump into position a few times. Normally, he's very fluid in his movements. Maybe he's just lost a little bit. I actually said that to a fellow media person, sort of not far behind the net, and he said, geez, hope Khawaja didn't hear you. It might give you a spray. But I don't think he did. But, yeah, that was one thing I picked up. Other than that, Stark, Cummins, Doggett, Boland, Abbott all had a bit of a bowl. All the batters had a go, but Mitch Marsh didn't bowl. And Pat Cummins said today that Mitch Marsh hasn't bowled. They're saving his overs for the test match and that he's going to warm up on day one, ready to bowl. And they didn't want to risk it before the test match. I think this is a very risky move. I think they're actually saying, we think we can get by without his bowling. He'll be there if we need him, but we just want to play him.
Yeah, and fair enough. Do Australia really need the fifth bowler? I don't know. I think, Lion's quite fresh as well. Let's think about it. Australia didn't bowl much in that first Indian innings. I mean, just Australia's batting was pretty awful as well. So rolled out India for 150. So they're quite fresh. So I think that talk about, Mitch Marsh's position might be more going into the Brisbane Test match because, there's only a 4-day break. So I don't think that's a concern. I think a Lion would just bowl that role. Marnus might bowl a little bit more. You still got Travis Head. That fifth bowler role, especially in this Test match, I think it's almost irrelevant, Menace. I think it's more relevant next game who they pick. Win, lose, or draw. I think it's a little bit...
Absolutely.
Overrated for this game because 10-day break. I think it's fine. If anything, everyone's a bit rusty rather than overcooked.
Bo Webster did do a lot of bowling in the net, so I think he's a legitimate chance to play at the Brisbane Test. And I think as well, had they thought about bringing in Webster for Marsh, it did open up a can of worms where. Are you going to drop Marsh, who's averaged 40 in Test cricket this year? He's the only Aussie top order player to do that when you got Marnus struggling. And then you sort of have to think to yourself, do we drop Marnus and keep Marsh and Webster? So I think the team, they preached calmness, and rather than, upset the apple cart too much after the first Test match, they're just bringing Boland in.
I agree. I mean, look, I could even see Australia making some drastic thing. What about Mitch Marsh up the order? If not this Test match, but one thing, and you talked about Usman Khawaja. I think this is a Usman Khawaja Test match. Minutes. I this is a big Test match for us. I think focus on Marnus, Smith, McSweeney, Head. I think Uzi's the guy. I think he got a really good nut against Bumrah. I think he faces Bumrah pretty well, to be honest. He's left-hander. He played a poor shot in that second innings. This is the Usman Khawaja Test. I think Usman is the guy who's going to get 70, 80, maybe 100. I think this Test match is set up nicely for him. I think he's the man Australia's got to look for in this Test match. I think no focus on Usman Khawaja. McSweeney knew, Marnus, Smith. I watch out. I think Uzi's a guy who could do it this Test.
Well, last time I was in Adelaide for a pink ball Test match in 2016, Khawaja scored 100 against South Africa. So maybe his good luck charm. So Rohit Sharma, so he said definitively KL Rahul is going to open and he's going to move into the middle order. The reasons he gave for that were that he was so impressed with the partnership and the way Rahul batted. He doesn't want to disrupt that. And he said actually sort of an insightful comment that he took, not easy to digest because, it's his spot, but he's going to slot into the middle order. I think it was the right move. What do you think?
Yes. It's a tough move, but good on Rohit Sharma for making this move. Maybe he feels, and the fact that he put it out there is like, we don't know for how long. So I think right now he probably feels, well, we're in good form. Why change anything, right? And that's good leadership. The important fact, and I've just put it on my social media, is I think it allow Rohit Sharma to relax a bit. Like India haven't had a skipper who's opened the batting since, Sunil Gavaskar back in the late 80s. So it's been a long time. Yes, you've had, KL Rahul's captain and Sehwag has done 3 or 4 test matches in between, but they have never had one. And if you look around the world cricket, I think it's getting more and more demanding on how rapid the game is changing. Alistair Cook, who's someone who did it, even Kane Williamson did it for a while, but he's at number 3, Joe Root at 4. So Graham Smith was another one, but that's still going back a while, So I think it's very taxing. And, you've got to make all the strategy, work out and get your number 9 out. Sometimes the tail enders hang around and then you sort of go and take that fresh. It's hard. You just need that 10 minutes to relax. So I think that's going to favor India. And I think Rohit probably had a little bit of a think about it, or maybe Gautam Gambhir, the Indian coach, has probably talked about it. So it's a good move. Good on Rohit Sharma. It's not easy. How long it lasts, I'm not sure. It could be depending on the result. But KL Rahul, his numbers are incredible. 300s outside of Asia since 2021, since COVID. Nobody has scored that many hundreds. He's faced on average 90 deliveries. That's more than any other top order player or any player in the Indian team. So the numbers game is good for KL Rahul. So why change it? And Jaiswal, well, he's probably going to be having that spot for the next decade. So tough decision, but you got to, I think Rohit's considered all these factors.
And do you think Shubman Gill will come back into the side? So in which case, obviously, Padikkal will go out at 3.
And Jarrell will go out. So
yeah.
Well,
and then Gill and Sharma come in.
He definitely comes in. Is number 3 the spot? I think so. I think they'll assurance of having Kohli at 4 and Rohit at 5, or I'm not sure how Shubman's hand is. They could play it by ear, but given Shubman Gill batted at 3 in the practice game, and Rohit was 4, I think Shubman will probably be at that number 3 spot. He's a counter-attacking player, decent record in Australia. I think Shubman will bat at 3, and Rohit, I think, could be a floater between 5 and 6, just depending on how India's going with Pant. Does he come up the order? Does he go down? Left-hand, right-hand combination, plenty of factors.
And then I guess the other question is, do they change the bowling lineup? Sharma was asked about Jadeja and Ashwin, and he talked about how good they've been and how much a part of the team they are. And then he just dropped a little hint when he said, we're aware some of those 2 have been very successful at certain grounds in Australia, and they'll be taking that into account with selection throughout the series. So obviously you've got the SCG that's very spin friendly, but Ashwin has a very good record at Adelaide. He's done pretty well here. So they might bring him in for the game. And I think that's a good idea. I think he's a significant threat to Australia and he should play.
I agree with you, because if you think, is Ashwin really going to be as effective at the Gabba? Maybe not. Maybe they'll stick with a similar sort of team with Washington Sundar, because the Pacers are probably going to have more of a role.
And last time, and Sundar did well when they were here at the Gabba last time, didn't he? So
absolutely, exactly. And there's 6 mils of grass on that pitch, and we've seen Nathan Lyon with that seam. It tends to catch on that grass, and if it catch, it will spin. There are some showers. It's been very hot in Adelaide, last
Trust
couple of
me.
days.
Oh my God, it was almost 40 degrees today. Look at me, I'm red still. No, I'm not even playing. I was just walking around.
At least you're not pink like the pink ball, so or you might get there today. But
I mean, there'll be a few pink poms next year, don't you worry.
But look, I think that grass will catch. So I think, I've just listening to Damien Hoff as well 2 days, given if it's generally hot leading up to a game, they water the pitch a little. And
actually, I saw it today. I just saw it today. So they actually uncovered it for a little while and to be in the press just for like half an hour. And it did look bright green, and clearly they were keeping it covered because it was 40 degrees and they didn't want it to dry out too much. So, but I still think maybe with the hot day today, it'll just be a little bit drier than they would have hoped. Just a smidge.
Yeah, and there's potentially a chance of showers on the opening day. So, But yeah, I would, if I was India, play Ashwin, because suddenly, you find Marnus. Let's say Marnus does get away or Smith does get away. There's that experience campaign of Ashwin bowling. They're not through it.
And it's just once you get to the 40 over mark, who would you rather face, Ashwin or Sundar?
Absolutely. And the other important fact is the fact that Nitish Kumar Reddy was batting at number 5 in that PM11. Yes, Kohli's probably had a decent hit and Pant probably didn't want to bat as well. And Nitish Kumar keeps impressing with every innings in Australia. So I think they're getting a little bit more confident of what they saw. So in Perth, they were a little bit, or what, don't want Nitish Kumar and Ashwin, a little bit of long tail. But Nitish Kumar proved himself. So he's probably ready to go to number 7 and then have Ashwin at 8. So there is also some whispers that Akash Deep might play instead of Nishit Rana. So I don't think that will, because I don't know if Akash Deep is the right person for the Gabba. Now, India's got to play what's in front of them, and I think they will. So I don't think they'll make that choice, but because he's more of an intimidator, he bowled pretty well. So there were some whispers, but I don't think that will happen. But I would be choosing Ashwin. I would really play Ashwin in this Test match.
Yeah, well, we agree on that one. Yeah, it was interesting, the contrast between Sharma and Cummins. Cummins quite tense, feeling the pressure. Sharma very relaxed, smiling, talking about his new baby. So these teams are coming in completely different mindsets. So that's the big news for the Test. Boland's coming in for Australia. No other changes. Rahul to open is confirmed for India. Any other points before we go into our prediction for the match?
How do they tackle Scotty Boland? I mean, England had a lot of success going after him. So they walk down the pitch. I think Shubman Gill would definitely do that. I think even Jaiswal, not so KL Rahul, but watch the Indian batters. I think they'll target Scott Boland here. I think they'll run at him. They'll when I say run at him, they'll shuffle, upset his length, and try whipping through the leg side. We saw some of the England top order had a bit of luck doing that. So I think, watch out. I think Indian batters are going to put pressure on Boland. They feel like he's the guy to target. So that's my little prediction.
Interesting. Well, I mean, it's huge shoes to fill. Hazelwood was the best bowler in the first Test for Australia by a mile. So if you can get stuck into bowling, then it's going to really put pressure on the other players. All right, Gav, what's your prediction? Who's going to win?
Simple prediction. Whichever team can bat, will be the first to bat more than 80 overs, will win the Test.
So you're not even going to predict it. Okay. I'm going to say it'll be...
Yep, whichever team will bat, whoever bats more than 80 overs the first time. So if India bat first and get 75 overs, and then if both teams get to 80 overs, we're in for a thrilling Test match, and let's hope so.
All right. Well, I'm predicting an Indian victory. I think it's going to be a stirring victory. And there's actually a bit of talk floating around. This is Australia's last fortress. So they've never lost a pink ball Test at Adelaide. All our other records have fallen by the wayside. We just lost at Perth. The Gabba we've lost a couple of times now. So the Windies and the Indies. All these grounds we had these sort of intimidating records are all falling by the wayside. And this is sort of the last one. Australia's never lost a pink ball Test in Adelaide. They've won all of them in Adelaide. So they're going to be very, very hard. It's a very big record, and I think they're going to lose here. And I think it's going to be a complete disaster. And at the end of the Test match, they're going to be tearing up the Australian team and throwing in a bunch of players for the Gabba Test. That's my prediction.
Well, at least I'm sitting on the fence a little bit. I'm not as negative about India, but you're still bagging and kicking the crap out of Australia. But and my other prediction is I think Usman Khawaja. I think that's my tip.
Okay.
I think he's going to score some runs. Like I said, whichever team bats best in the first innings or bats more than 80 overs in the first innings is going to win the Test match. Simple as that. All
right, a great prediction. All right, just a couple of other bits of cricket news before we wrap this up, Gav. Since we last recorded, Todd Greenberg has been appointed the new CEO of Cricket Australia. He will take over from Nick Hockley in March next year, I think it is. And he had press conference here in Adelaide today where he talked about, wanting to communicate a bit better with the Australian public as the CEO and be a bit more forward-facing than Nick Hockley. Now, for other people that aren't aware of Todd Greenberg, he's obviously in charge, the CEO of the Australian Cricketers Association, but he's also held very prominent posts in the rugby league area of things in Australia. He was the CEO of the NRL. People know that's not my forte, but he's actually used to being in the media spotlight, I think a little bit more than Nick Hockley, and it will be a different type of leadership. I think Hockley was a very good administrator behind the scenes, very steady, but I think Greenberg will be a bit more forward-facing and a bit keener to get out and really try and sort of lead cricket in Australia as a bit of a figurehead.
Greenberg there and Mike Baird around and CA board. Well, somewhere, like the capitalistic and the in terms of the money, I think that's the first approach. I wouldn't be surprised, Menes, if under those regime we could make the Big Bash privatized. That's my big saying. That's my big thing out of these two. I think it might not happen straight away, but yeah, and it could decide how long Greenberg is in that role. I'm huge Canterbury Bulldogs fan. I know a few of the board members, and I know how he ran the club, good or bad. Well, maybe that's something to discuss later on.
What's your mail? Good or bad?
Oh, I've just given you a bit of a mail, but I think there'll be a bit of a financial focus around Cricket Australia and make it more of a profit thing. So how they're going to do it, I'm not sure, but I'm sure we'll hear more of it in maybe another year's time. We'll have this conversation, but until then, it depends. It's all about batting in Adelaide. That's what I'm thinking.
Absolutely. I actually think I live not far from Greenberg because I've seen him walking his dog a few times. So I'm going to try and befriend the CEO so I can get a bit of mail for the listeners. Last bit of news, because you and I are both very involved with New South Wales cricket. Cricket New South Wales was forced to issue an apology over comments around Adam Zampa being forced to play in the Sheffield Shield by Cricket Australia. And my comment around this, Gab, is this looks bad for everybody. Cricket New South Wales, Cricket Australia, the selectors, Stuart Clark, Ed Cowan, Zampa himself doesn't look great. This should be handled better. The instruction should be very clear either way.
I think the one person that everyone's forgotten about, and given all the communication, is apparently Zampa messaged or called George Bailey or saw George Bailey and said, "Am I a chance for Sri Lanka?" Now George Bailey probably genuinely feels he's a chance, which I don't agree on, or he's just trying to be Mr. Nice Guy to Adam Zampa and say, "Yeah, you're a chance." Now that's where I think there's a problem. Does George Bailey really think Adam Zampa was ever going to go to Sri Lanka? I mean, I doubt it, Menes. This selection panel picked Matt Kuhneman and flew him to India next day, and he played the day after. Australia has figured out that in the spinning conditions of the subcontinent, a finger spinner needs to be played. We have to lose so many test matches to notice that. Matt Kuhneman is there. You've got Rockacholi. You've got Todd Murphy. You've got Nathan Lyon. Adam Zampa's never gone on that tour, right? So I think that's where the communication was wrong. And I think, George Bailey should have said, "No, Zamps." Now, why George Bailey said that, I don't know. If he genuinely felt that, then, who are we to know? But I think that's where the miscommunication has started.
I mean, it did start there, but I think after that, this has got to be run better by Cricket Australia, by Cricket New South Wales. There should be no ambiguity about this. If they want him to play, just say it. And if it's clearly just up to the New South Wales selectors, then make that clear. But what is clear is that this one was a cock-up.
Well, similarly last year, and I'll just finish on this note, and where the states and the Cricket Australia, this will continue to happen. Firstly, the Cameron Green injury. I was told that Western Australia probably, some of the support staff there weren't keen on him bowling, over in sort of England and stuff. And, Cameron Green did bowl. So why did that happen? So there's a big question mark about that. Second question mark, I remember Travis Head being dropped for that match, first test match against India. Now, I was at the SCG commentating, and some wise person within, the Tasmanian dressing room told me this, that the fact that even there was a memo sent out to some of those coaches saying, doesn't matter what we do, Matt Renshaw is going to be playing, so give him a chance. So every time, Matt Renshaw is around, he's going to be, if it's a turning pitch, then, Matt Renshaw. So it was almost dictated. This goes back to October, and the India test match was in. So a plan had been devised. So clearly, CA definitely have instructions, which is fair enough. There's nothing wrong with that. But we've just seen a couple of these clashes, and both of them probably have ended up, wrong way. Like Travis Head was, pretty good in India after he was dropped. He came back in Delhi and got a few runs. So just a couple of examples, from the past, which can relate to what's happened in the past week.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they've just got to do better, because it's not good for cricket when this stuff is played out publicly. It's great for us because it gives us some juicy stuff to talk about. All right, Gav, thanks for joining me for this preview of the second test. Your definitive prediction is Khawaja to score runs, and the team that bats 80 overs will win the match. I'm saying it's going to be a famous Indian victory. I'll be back after every day of the test match from